Welcome to Nebraska Farmcast, a production of the Center for Agricultural Profitability at the University of Nebraska-Lincoln. I'm Ryan Evans. Managing risk in an agricultural operation is a never-ending job. Available information related to tools like marketing contracts and crop insurance is constantly changing. Given the state of constant change and uncertainty, it's important for operations to work to create a good risk management culture where everyone manages risk on a day-to-day basis in a positive and timely manner. That's according to Jay Parsons, a professor and farm and ranch management specialist with the Center for Ag Profitability here at UNL. He has a new article on our site at cap.unl.edu that walks through 5 key principles for a good risk management culture, and he is here now to explain more. Hey, Jay, thanks for joining me again.
Thanks for having me, Ryan.
Yeah, so I touched in that intro on some of what you've written already about the importance of risk management. Can you just expand on the importance of the practice and give us an idea of why it's important to prioritize risk management on ag operations?
Yeah, well, as you mentioned, it's a never-ending job in any business, really, but especially in agriculture, where you have all the market uncertainties that we see on a day-to-day basis, and that's certainly been in the news lately, with different things that can happen there that can have major price movements on any given day, and certainly over the course of time. But also because ag people are producing largely out in the elements, and so it's not like you're just manufacturing widgets and dealing with market uncertainty. You're actually out there in the elements dealing with all the weather uncertainty that we see manifest itself all the time, whether it be floods or heat, drought, whatever the case may be, and all of those create risk for the ag producer. And so it is a never-ending task, and it's largely a daunting task for ag producers to deal with all that uncertainty on a regular basis. And the best way to do that is to basically develop a good risk management culture, rather than thinking of it as an add-on at the end of the day or maybe something you do during a planning period. You're just dealing with it constantly, so you need to make it part of your culture.
The 5 principles you lay out to improve risk management culture among everyone involved in an operation start with the ability to anticipate decisions. So can you just explain what you mean by that, and then how operators can work to improve in this area?
Yeah, well, certainly we'd all wish we had a crystal ball and we knew exactly what decisions need to be made and what the right answers are. But when it comes to managing risk and all of that uncertainty that's out there, one of the core things is to know exactly what it is you want to accomplish when you make a decision, right? So you're trying to accomplish certain goals and objectives in your operation. And if you build that as a part of your culture and make sure everybody in your operation is aware of what you're trying to achieve, it just builds this larger capacity for them to basically recognize the opportunities to make decisions to help you achieve those objectives. And that includes, as I allude to here, with the ability to anticipate actually some foresight on into the future that's going to be there as an opportunity to make a choice. And I mentioned in the article the human resource example of perhaps wanting to keep your employees happy and whatnot, and maybe you can anticipate some opportunities to give them time off or something like that. And you just think through, right now we're in the fall right now, kids are going back to school, and you have an employee mention that their son or daughter made the varsity or JV team or whatever. Well, that should trigger something in your mind that they're going to want to be attending some games in the near future. So now it's time to think about that and anticipate. So when that employee comes to you and says, hey, can I get off work at 4 o'clock to go attend my son or daughter's basketball game or whatever the case may be that they're actually participating in, that you're prepared for it and that you've thought it through and you can handle that situation.
Maybe like human resources risk, is that something that it's not as easy for people to think of that as a risk in terms of evaluating what all of the risks are to manage on an operation, but so important, right? Because it takes so much time and money to invest in training and onboarding new employees. Yeah,
and it's interesting because when I mention risk management to producers or to people in general in agriculture, they immediately think of insurance and marketing decisions and, where you have some numbers to work with and some fairly distinct decision points usually that you're working with. But things like human resource risk and just managing your employees to make sure they're well trained, make sure they're happy and that they're doing good work and so on. We all know that that's a big key to success in any business, is having good people working for you. So it's a huge area, one of the many areas to manage risk in your operation. And it's one that's ongoing and it's not so programmed, I guess is what I would say. And that's a large part of when we say a culture, that's a large part of it. it is just that people are headed in the same direction with you, and you understand the things that are threats to not achieving that.
Great, and we'll get to more in that realm of human resource risk management coming up here. But the next principle you lay out is capacity building. So what's important for operators to understand about being prepared to be able to adapt to changing conditions?
Yeah, well, one area one term that people might recognize is contingency planning. That you have a plan A and hopefully everything goes well, but if things go bad, that you have a plan B or plan C that you can turn to, and that's part of capacity building. Whether it's just having extra resources around, or maybe you plant a crop and it's not doing too well, but there's an alternative use of it. Maybe you graze it instead of harvest it or something like that. But you have those things thought through, that you have the capacity to actually adjust to changing conditions and make the best of a situation. That's a huge part of risk management, and so I point that out in the article that good operations and in general, just good businesses, they always have that capacity to adjust and go in a different direction if the situation calls for it.
And the next couple of strategies you recommend have some to do with communication, again, kind of going back to the human element here. So how can developing a culture of open communication and just information sharing within an operation help to improve risk management culture?
Well, so much about risk is about the unknowns, right? And so much about resolving unknowns is about information and finding out that information. So that's really the gist of this. And it's not just information from outside. We think about that as, say, getting market information or policy information or something from outside of an organization. Certainly we want to keep ourselves informed and have that free flow of information into the operation so we can make good choices, but also within the operation that the information flows. And an example I like to cite is there's a well-known business author that basically built his business off of the idea that you have he called it a mistake board or something like that. But if you made a mistake, you were expected to write it down, not just. The idea wasn't just that you learn from your mistake, that everybody else learns from that mistake also. So that's part of building a culture, so people aren't afraid to admit their mistakes and learn from them. And you could do that on an ag operation too, that if somebody messes up or whatever, that they're not hiding that mistake. They're not only admitting it to you, say, as the boss or the manager, but they actually let other people know so everybody else learns from it and people don't repeat that mistake into the future. And that's all part of managing risk on an operation.
And I imagine that probably makes the employees feel a little bit more at ease about having some room to make mistakes, right? They're not trying to hide things and cover them up.
Yeah, we understand people make mistakes. I mean, I make mistakes if I didn't make a mistake in a day, it's a very rare day. And certainly you want to learn from those, like I said, and the idea is it's on an operation that you just don't get them repeated, not just by the person that made them, but by other people too. And that really pushes the operation forward in a very positive way.
You write about also the willingness to learn and adapt. So how can this help and go further to create this buy-in or a clearer understanding from others in the organization when big decisions have to be made?
Yeah, well, of course, sometimes we talk about people being set in their ways, so to speak. So that's a little bit here that you need to. It's part of that adaptation that I mentioned. As far as just having the capacity to adapt, they're tied together. But there's the capacity, but then there's also the willingness to actually do it. And one of the things I mentioned in the article is just that you actually, and again, it gets back to that communication piece, that you're actually talking about those adaptations that you might make if certain situations occur. And so that you're basically have thought through actually making the change before you're forced to do it in a yes or no situation. So, of course, information is not really useful if you don't use it. So it's pretty elementary in a sense that as that stuff comes to the front and develops, and that you're able to actually pull it together and make choices to move things in a different direction because the situation calls for it.
And then the fifth and final principle you write about in this article is just that of embedding risk management into every decision-making process. So what are some ways you recommend doing this, and how does it build a better risk management culture?
Well, the big part is a lot of times, risk and uncertainty is, like I said, is pretty daunting on people, and in some cases it involves numbers, and we kind of try to avoid the math stuff and all those things. So we tend to tack it on at the end. So we like to make plans. If somebody says, "Well, is this going to work?" We put numbers down like prices and yields and costs and things like that, as if we know them for certain, and we pencil it out. We say, "Well, this looks like it's going to make me $100 an acre. I think I ought to do that." And then somebody says, "Well, what about uncertainty?" And then you add that on at the end, maybe, or maybe not. Maybe you just say, "Well, we'll see how it goes." But the thing about risk management is it's not quite that simple, right? It's better. The best risk managers actually think, as they're thinking through that, they think not in terms of absolute number, but actually ranges around that. And to be honest, sometimes, if you're going to go buy something and the price that you know what you're going to pay for it, and the quantity you're going to buy, that's a certainty. It's a done, okay? But if you know that you're going to buy it in, like, say, a month, and you haven't got it priced in yet, you don't know if you're going to be able to get it, you think through those things now as a wide range. They might, especially right now where we have such trouble with our supply chain, they might not have it in place, or the price might change by quite a bit because they can't get it or whatever, or it's hard to get at that point in time. And so then that's kind of that's kind of in a nutshell, that if that's built into it, then you're going to think through, hey, what's the true uncertainty around this input that I'm thinking of purchasing? Maybe I need to anticipate that ahead of time, or lock that in ahead of time, or maybe there's a decision point, say 2 weeks from now, that I'll know for sure I'm going to need it, and have a better handle on the quantity I'll need. And so then I'm going to call them up today and see if could be a problem. I'm going to call them up in 2 weeks and place the order. I really don't need it for another month. All those things are a part of embedding it into your operation, that it's not something that you tack on the end if you have time to do the analysis, or somebody forces you to do it, say a banker that wants to make sure that you're going to be able to pay your note or something like that, but that it's just a part of your regular thinking when you write down a number of how certain you are about that and what the range of it might be if it is uncertain.
And so many of these 5 principles that you lay out here are seemingly ones that can be most effective when they just become part of one's thought process. And just like you say in the last point, they're all embedded into your strategy and how you work. Is there any tangible action that you might recommend an operator can take if they're thinking, hey, we have some room for improvement in our culture here as far as risk management goes? Where can somebody start if they want to sit down and start to improve that?
Yeah, well, probably the last little bit that I just said in terms of thinking of numbers not as a certainty, but ask yourself, is there some uncertainty around that, and what does it look like? And if it's a wide range and super uncertain, where can I gather information to make it less uncertain, and so on? But you hit the nail on the head there when we talk about, just the importance of having this a part of your culture. So often when we talk about risk, people think that they have to write a bunch of numbers down, pull up a spreadsheet, do a whole bunch of fancy analysis. Really, the best thing they can do is make it a part of their culture and part of their mindset, that we think about things in terms of what might happen. And we're dealing with drought in various parts of the state. We got pasture conditions. You got a lot of people anticipating what is that resource going to look like, 2 or 3 weeks from now. Maybe they planted some annual forages that they might go to. What are those going to look like? All those types of things, looking at the future and thinking of the range of possibilities that might be there. Just making that a part of your culture to where everybody is thinking in terms of that helps mitigate a lot of the risks that we see today in agriculture.
All right, that's Jay Parsons, professor and farm and ranch management analyst in the Department of Agricultural Economics and the Center for Ag Profitability here at the University of Nebraska-Lincoln. And you can find his new article, 5 Principles of a Good Risk Management Culture, on our website at cap.unl.edu, which also includes a host of other helpful resources related to risk management. So check that out, cap.unl.edu. Jay, thanks for the great information in the article and your time on the podcast today.
Thanks for having me on, and thanks for getting this information out.
Nebraska Farmcast is a production of the Center for Agricultural Profitability at the University of Nebraska-Lincoln. For the latest research-based information and education resources to manage your farm or ranch operation, visit our website at cap.unl.edu. That's cap.unl.edu.